The evening rush hour at Central Station was in full swing. Bodies moved in all directions, some rushing toward departing trains, others streaming out of arriving ones. The noise was a mix of announcements over crackling speakers, snippets of phone calls, and the steady hum of hundreds of conversations. Layla Wilson was caught in the middle of it all. Her day had started with a last-minute design request from her biggest client and ended with her boss asking her to stay late to fix someone else's mistake. Now she was running late for dinner with her mom, who was visiting from out of town. Layla clutched her portfolio bag to her side, protecting it from the jostling crowd. The bag contained her tablet and sketchbook, the tools of her trade as a graphic designer. Her other hand gripped her phone as she sent her mom a quick text. "On my way. Train station packed. Be there soon." She looked up at the large digital display hanging from the ceiling. Her train would leave in 7 minutes from Platform 6. Plenty of time if she could just get through this crowd. "Excuse me," she said, trying to weave through a group of teenagers glued to their phones. No one moved. "Excuse me, please," she repeated. A bit louder this time. A gap finally opened, and Layla slipped through, breathing a sigh of relief as she spotted the sign for Platform 6. She adjusted the strap of her bag and quickened her pace, her sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. That's when she noticed him. An elderly man stood near a pillar slightly apart from the moving crowd. He wore a neat gray suit that hung loose on his thin frame, and his weathered hands gripped a white cane. His eyes were hidden behind dark glasses, but there was something about the way he held his head, slightly tilted, as if listening intently, that caught Layla's attention. He tapped his cane in front of him, then hesitated. A group of commuters rushed past, nearly knocking into him. The old man pressed himself against the pillar, his free hand reaching out to steady himself. Layla glanced at her phone. 6 minutes until her train departed. She should keep moving, but something made her pause. The man's expression held a mixture of determination and uncertainty that tugged at her heart. She watched as he took another tentative step forward, only to be cut off by a hurried businessman who didn't even glance his way. 5 minutes until her train. Her mother would understand if she was a little late. Layla made her decision and walked over to the elderly man. "Excuse me, sir," she said gently, not wanting to startle him. "Would you like some help finding your train?" The man turned toward her, voice a look of relief washing over his face. "Oh, thank goodness. Yes, I would appreciate that very much." His voice was deep and warm, with a slight southern drawl that reminded Layla of her grandfather. "I'm trying to get to Platform 3, but these renovations have changed everything. I used to know this station like the back of my hand, but now—" He shook his head with a rueful smile. "I'd be happy to take you there," Layla said. "My name's Layla, by the way." "Pleased to meet you, Layla. I'm Harold," the man replied, extending his hand. His grip was surprisingly firm when they shook. "I don't want to be a bother. I know everyone's in a hurry this time of day." "It's no bother at all," Layla assured him, even as she mentally calculated that she would likely miss her train now. "Platform 3 is this way. Would you like to take my arm?" Harold nodded gratefully and placed his hand on her forearm. Layla noticed how carefully he folded his white cane with his other hand. Clearly he'd been using it for many years. "Have you been blind all your life?" she asked as they began to walk, then immediately regretted the question. "I'm sorry, that's probably too personal," Harold chuckled. "No, not at all. I don't mind talking about it. I lost my sight about 15 years ago. Glaucoma. I was 63 then, so I had many good years of seeing this beautiful world." They moved slowly through the station, with Layla gently guiding Harold around obstacles and describing the path ahead. "There's a small step here," she warned as they approached a slight change in floor level. "And we're passing the coffee shop now. It smells amazing, doesn't it?" "Indeed it does," Harold agreed, inhaling deeply. "Colombian blend, I'd guess. I've become quite the connoisseur of smells since losing my sight. It's fascinating how the other senses try to make up for what's lost." As they walked, Harold asked Layla about herself. There was something about his attentive listening that made her open up more than she usually would with a stranger. "I'm a graphic designer," she explained. "Just finished a tough day at work. I was supposed to be meeting my mom for dinner, but—" She trailed off, not wanting to make him feel bad about her missed train. "But you stopped to help an old man instead," Harold finished for her. "I'm truly sorry if I've made you late." "Please don't worry about it," Layla insisted. "Mom will understand. Besides, there's another train in 30 minutes. They reached platform 3 where a train was already waiting. "We're here," Layla announced. "The train doors are about 10 feet ahead of us. Do you need help getting on?" "If you wouldn't mind," Harold said. "Just to the door would be wonderful." As they approached the train, Harold's hand tightened slightly on her arm. "May I ask why you stopped to help me, when dozens of others walked right by?" The question caught Layla off guard. I guess I saw that you needed help, and I could give it. Simple as that, Harold's face crinkled into a smile. Kindness shouldn't be rare, but sometimes it is. Especially in busy places like this, where everyone's rushing off to their importance somewhere else. They reached the train door, and Layla guided Harold's hand to the handrail. "Here you are, sir." "Thank you, Layla," Harold said, his voice suddenly serious. "Truly. I was beginning to think I'd made a mistake trying to make this journey alone today. My family worries, but I've always valued my independence. You've helped me keep a bit of that." Layla felt a warmth spread through her chest. "You're very welcome, Harold. Have a safe trip." Harold stepped onto the train but turned back toward her. "I take this train every Tuesday and Thursday to visit the botanical gardens. The roses are in bloom now, can't see them anymore. Of course, but their scent is magnificent." He paused, then added, "Perhaps our paths will cross again." "I'd like that," Layla said, surprised to realize she meant it. The announcement for the final boarding call echoed through the station. Harold nodded once more in her direction, before making his way further into the train car. Layla watched until the doors closed and the train began to pull away from the platform. Only then did she check her phone again. Her mom had sent 3 texts asking where she was. "Sorry," Layla typed quickly. "Helped an elderly blind man find his train. Tell you about it when I get there." Taking the 6:45 now. As she made her way back to platform 6, Layla found herself thinking about Harold. There had been something different about him, a dignity and warmth that stood out in the cold rush of the station. She wondered about his life, what he had seen in all his years before darkness took his sight. Her own train arrived, and as Layla found a seat, she realized she didn't regret her decision for a moment. Her design projects and deadlines suddenly seemed less important. When compared to the genuine connection she'd just experienced, little did she know that this chance encounter would change the course of her life in ways she couldn't possibly imagine. As her train pulled out of the station, Layla had no idea that she would be seeing Harold again much sooner than expected, or that he was far more than just an elderly, blind man making his way to the botanical gardens. Layla's dinner with her mom that evening was filled with laughter and catching up, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Harold. There was something about him that stuck with her. Perhaps his dignity, or the way he spoke with such thoughtfulness. "You've been distracted all night," her mom said, reaching across the table to pat Layla's hand. "Still thinking about that man you helped at the station?" Layla nodded. "I don't know why. It was just a small thing." "Small things can be big things," her mom replied with a knowing smile. "Your grandma used to say that kindness never goes to waste. It always finds its way back somehow." 2 days later, Layla found herself leaving work early. Her boss had been impressed with her latest designs and told her to take the afternoon off, a rare occurrence at her demanding job. Without really planning to, Layla found herself heading toward Central Station around the same time she'd met Harold. She told herself she was just taking advantage of the less crowded trains before rush hour. But as she entered the station, her eyes scanned platform 3, looking for a thin figure with a white cane. And there he was. Harold stood near the same pillar where she'd first spotted him, his cane tapping lightly against the floor. He wore a different suit today, navy blue instead of gray, but his posture was unmistakable. Layla hesitated. He probably wouldn't even remember her. It had been a brief encounter, and he surely met many people who helped him. But before she could decide whether to approach him, Harold turned his head in her direction, almost as if he sensed her presence. "Excuse me," he called out, his voice carrying surprisingly well across the busy space. "Is someone there? I feel like someone's watching me." Layla walked over to him. "It's Layla, sir. From 2 days ago? I helped you to the train." Harold's face lit up with genuine delight. "Layla, what a wonderful coincidence, or is it?" His eyebrows rose above his dark glasses. "Did you happen to remember I mentioned coming on Tuesdays and Thursdays?" Caught out, Layla felt her cheeks warm. "I did have the day off," she admitted. "And I thought, Well, I was curious about the botanical gardens you mentioned. Harold's smile widened. Were you indeed? Well then, would you care to join me? I can't offer you the visual tour, obviously, but I know all the best spots where the fragrances are most beautiful. The invitation surprised her. I wouldn't want to intrude on your routine. Nonsense, Harold said firmly. I'd welcome the company, unless you have other plans. Layla didn't have other plans. Her evening stretched before her, empty except for the prospect of microwaved leftovers and scrolling through job listings. She'd been feeling increasingly restless at her current position. Despite today's rare praise, I'd like that, she said. They boarded the train together, finding seats near the back of the car where it was less crowded. As the train pulled away from the station, Harold turned toward her. Tell me about yourself, Layla. I know you're a graphic designer, but what drew you to that field? No one had asked her that question in a long time. Most people she met were more interested in which clients she worked for or how much she earned. The genuine curiosity in Harold's voice made her pause and really think about her answer. I've always loved art, she began slowly. When I was little, my mom couldn't afford many toys, but she always made sure I had paper and crayons. I'd draw for hours. She smiled at the memory. As I got older, I realized I wanted to create art that served a purpose, that communicated something. That's what graphic design is, really. Art with a message. Harold nodded, his expression attentive. And do you feel your work now allows you to express that passion? The question hit close to home. Not as much as I'd like, Layla admitted. Most of what I do is corporate. Logos, brochures, website layouts. The clients already know exactly what they want. There's not much room for creativity. Ah, Harold said. That's the struggle, isn't it? Finding the balance between practicality and passion. He adjusted his dark glasses. I know something about that myself, and what did you do? Before? Layla gestured, then realized he couldn't see the motion. Before you lost your sight? Harold's hands rested on his cane, his fingers lightly tapping the handle. I was in business. Started small, built it up over time. Quite successful eventually. There was no pride in his voice, just simple fact. But that's not what defines me. What does define you? Layla asked, genuinely curious. Harold tilted his head, considering. The choices I've made, the people I've loved, the good I've tried to do in this world, he smiled. Same as anyone, I suppose. The train slowed as it approached the next station. This is our stop, Harold said, rising with surprising steadiness as the train came to a halt. Layla offered her arm, and they exited together onto a platform much less crowded than Central Station. The botanical gardens were apparently just a short walk away. As they strolled, Harold kept his hand lightly on Layla's arm, but seemed to know the route well. Left at the corner here, he instructed. Then straight ahead about 200 paces. You really do know your way, Layla remarked. Memory and counting steps, Harold explained. When you lose one sense, you learn to rely on others. But I'm grateful for help when the environment changes. Construction crowds, those can throw me off completely. They reached the entrance to the gardens, a wrought iron gate set between stone pillars. Harold pulled out a card from his wallet and showed it to the attendant, who nodded with recognition. Good afternoon, Mr. H. Your usual bench is free. Thank you, Thomas, Harold replied warmly. This is my friend Layla. The attendant tipped his hat to her. Welcome, miss. Enjoy your visit. They followed a winding path through carefully manicured lawns and flower beds. Layla described the vibrant colors to Harold, the deep purples of the irises, the fiery reds of the late-blooming tulips, the delicate pinks of the cherry blossoms overhead. You have a wonderful way with words, Harold commented. You paint pictures I can see in my mind. They reached a secluded bench partially hidden by a trellis covered in climbing roses. The fragrance was intoxicating. My special spot, Harold said, settling onto the bench with a contented sigh. The gardeners tell me these are damask roses, brought from the Middle East centuries ago. But I don't need the history lesson to appreciate that smell. Layla sat beside him, taking in the peaceful scene. It's beautiful here. I can see why you come twice a week. It clears my mind, Harold said. Too easy to get lost in worries, regrets, plans. Here I'm just present, just breathing, just being. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the distant sounds of children laughing and birds singing. Eventually Harold spoke again. You mentioned you're not satisfied with your current job. What would you do if money were no object? The question caught Layla off guard. I guess I'd want to use my design skills to help people. Maybe work with nonprofits or create educational materials for kids who don't have many resources. She hesitated, then added, I actually volunteer sometimes at a community center teaching art to children. It doesn't pay, but it feels meaningful. Harold's face softened. That's wonderful, Layla. Truly. Finding meaning is far more important than finding wealth, though I won't pretend that having enough money doesn't make life easier. He chuckled. It certainly does. As the afternoon light began to fade, Harold reluctantly announced it was time for him to head back. My daughter will worry if I'm not home by dinner. She thinks I'm too old to be wandering around on my own. Are you? Layla asked with a small smile. Harold laughed. Probably. But don't tell her I said so. On the train ride back to Central Station, Harold reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small notebook and pen. Layla, would you mind writing down your full name and a phone number where you can be reached? I'd very much like to properly thank you for your kindness. That's really not necessary, Layla protested. I've enjoyed our time together. Humor an old man, Harold insisted, holding out the notebook. Please. Something in his tone made Layla take the notebook. She wrote down her full name, Layla Wilson, and her cell phone number, then handed it back. Thank you, Harold said, tucking the notebook away with unusual care. I have a feeling we were meant to meet, Layla Wilson. Some might call it chance, but I've lived too long to believe in mere coincidence. They parted at Central Station with a promise from Harold that she would hear from him soon. As Layla watched him confidently navigate his way toward the exit, she had the strangest feeling that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't possibly imagine. She had no idea just how right she was. The next morning, Layla's alarm went off at 6:30 as usual. She reached for her phone to silence it and noticed a text from an unknown number that had come in around midnight. Please expect a call regarding Harold Thomas at 9 a.m. Thank you. Layla blinked at the screen, still groggy. Harold Thomas. So that was his last name. She hadn't even realized she didn't know it until now. The message was odd, formal and mysterious. She wondered if Harold was okay. Maybe he'd fallen ill after their trip to the gardens. The thought made her stomach twist with worry as she got ready for work. At precisely 9 a.m., while Layla was setting up her workstation, her phone rang. The caller ID showed unknown number. Hello, she answered, stepping away from her desk into the hallway. Good morning. Am I speaking with Layla Wilson? The woman's voice was crisp and professional. Yes, that's me. My name is Diana Chen. I'm the executive assistant to Harold Thomas. Mr. Thomas has asked me to invite you to his office today at noon, if that would be convenient for you. Layla frowned in confusion. His office? I mean, he's retired, isn't he? There was a pause on the other end of the line. Mr. Thomas is semi-retired, but he still maintains an active role in his foundation. Would noon work for your schedule, Ms. Wilson? I guess so. I'd need to ask my boss for an extended lunch break. If that poses any difficulty, Mr. Thomas would be happy to call your supervisor personally. He's quite eager to meet with you. No, that won't be necessary, Layla said quickly, wondering what was going on. Can you tell me what this is about? Mr. Thomas prefers to discuss that with you directly, Diana replied. I'll text you the address. Our driver can pick you up at 11:30 if that's convenient. Driver? Layla repeated. No, that's okay. Just send the address and I'll get there myself. After ending the call, Layla stood in the hallway trying to make sense of what had just happened. Harold had an office, and an executive assistant, and a driver? Who exactly was this elderly man she'd helped at the train station? A quick internet search on her phone turned up nothing conclusive. There were too many Harold Thomases in the world, and without knowing which companies or organizations he was associated with, she couldn't narrow it down. At 11:15, Layla left her office building and took a taxi to the address Diana had sent. As the car pulled up to the destination, Layla's eyes widened. They were in the most prestigious part of downtown, and the taxi had stopped in front of a gleaming skyscraper with the name Thomas Foundation displayed in elegant lettering above the entrance. This can't be right, Layla muttered, double-checking the address on her phone. But it matched. The lobby was all marble and glass, with a security desk and turnstiles requiring badge access. Layla approached the receptionist, suddenly conscious of her simple work clothes. Black pants and a blue blouse that had seemed fine for her design firm, but felt underdressed here. I'm here to see Harold Thomas. My name is Layla Wilson. The receptionist's professional demeanor warmed immediately. Yes, Ms. Wilson, you're expected. Please take the executive elevator to the top floor. She handed Layla a visitor's badge. Patricia will meet you when you arrive. The executive elevator was lined with polished wood and had only a few buttons. Layla pressed the one for the top floor and tried to calm her racing thoughts. This had to be some kind of mistake. Her herald couldn't be the Harold Thomas who apparently owned this building. When the elevator doors opened, a woman in her 40s with a stylish gray pantsuit was waiting. Ms. Wilson, I'm Patricia Reynolds, Mr. Thomas's chief of staff. Thank you for coming on such short notice. She led Layla through an elegant reception area and down a hallway lined with artwork that looked like museum pieces. They passed several offices where people worked quietly at sleek desks before stopping at a set of double doors. Patricia knocked softly, then opened one door. Mr. Thomas? Layla Wilson is here. Wonderful. Please send her in. The voice was unmistakably Harold's, and as Layla entered the spacious office, she saw him sitting in a comfortable chair near the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city. He stood as she entered, that same warm smile on his face. Layla, thank you for coming. I hope all the mystery didn't alarm you. I don't understand, Layla said, staying near the door. Who are you exactly? Harold gestured to a chair opposite his. Please sit down. I owe you an explanation. As Layla cautiously took a seat, Harold settled back into his chair. I am indeed Harold Thomas, founder of Thomas Industries and, later, the Thomas Foundation. And yes, I'm the same old blind man you helped at the train station. He paused, removing his dark glasses and setting them aside. His cloudy eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled. I should have been more forthcoming when we met. But you see, when people know who I am, they tend to treat me differently. I wanted to experience a genuine interaction, so you were... What, testing people? Layla felt a flicker of disappointment. No. Harold shook his head firmly. I wasn't testing anyone. I truly needed help that day. The station renovations had disoriented me completely. What I'm trying to say, rather poorly, is that I valued how you treated me as a person, not a potential resource or opportunity. Your kindness was genuine. Layla looked around the luxurious office, trying to reconcile this reality with the humble man she'd guided through the train station. I don't understand why I'm here. Why all this? She gestured at their surroundings. Fair question. Harold nodded. I wanted to thank you properly, yes. But more importantly, I wanted to continue our conversation from the gardens. He leaned forward slightly. You mentioned wanting to use your design skills for something meaningful, something that helps people. I believe I might be able to offer you that opportunity. What do you mean? Harold reached for a tablet on the side table, his fingers finding it with practiced ease. He pressed a button and a woman's voice spoke from the device. Call Diana, please. A moment later there was a knock at the door, and Diana, whom Layla recognized as the voice from the morning phone call, entered carrying a portfolio. The materials you requested, Mr. Thomas, she said, placing the portfolio on the coffee table between them before quietly leaving. My foundation focuses on several causes, Harold explained as he motioned for Layla to open the portfolio. Education, healthcare, community development. But we've recently decided to launch a new initiative focused on arts education for underserved communities. Layla opened the portfolio to find beautifully printed brochures, annual reports and photographs of children in art classes, community murals and gallery exhibitions. We've been doing this work for years on a smaller scale, Harold continued, but now we want to expand it nationwide. We need someone with vision, someone who understands both the artistic and the human elements of this work. Someone like you, Layla. She looked up from the portfolio, stunned. Me, but you barely know me. Harold's expression softened. I'm a good judge of character. Have to be when you can't rely on visual cues. Our conversations told me a lot about your values, your passion, and I did a bit of research after you gave me your name. He smiled apologetically. I hope you don't mind. My team found your volunteer work at the community center. They spoke with the director there who couldn't say enough good things about your dedication and talent. Layla's mind was spinning. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you an opportunity, Harold corrected gently, to head our new Arts Access initiative. Full creative control, resources to build something meaningful, and yes, a salary that would allow you to focus on this work without financial worry. He paused, his cloudy eyes seeming to look right through her despite his blindness. Money and position. These things came to me later in life, Layla. I was nearly 50 before Thomas Industries took off. What matters isn't what we have, but what we do with it. I believe you understand that intuitively. Layla's thoughts raced. Was this really happening? It seemed too good to be true, like something from a movie, not real life. This is overwhelming. Of course it is, Harold agreed. I don't expect an answer today. Take some time to think about it. Visit our current programs, talk to our staff. Make sure it's the right fit. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, offering it to her. My personal number is on this. Not the office line, not my assistant's line, mine. If you have questions, concerns, ideas, call me directly. Layla took the card, noticing it had both regular print and braille. Just like Harold himself, it bridged two worlds. Why me? She asked finally. There must be hundreds of designers with more experience, better connections. Harold smiled, the same warm smile she'd first seen at the train station. Because when you saw an old blind man struggling, you didn't just see a problem to solve or a good deed to check off your list. You saw a human being. That quality, genuine compassion, can't be taught. And it's exactly what we need for this initiative to succeed. As Layla left the Thomas Foundation building 30 minutes later, her head was still spinning. In her bag was the portfolio Harold had given her, along with information about the position and the foundation's work. She stood on the sidewalk, looking up at the gleaming skyscraper with its prestigious name, then down at the simple business card in her hand. Somehow, impossibly, they were connected to the same kind elderly man she'd met by chance in a crowded train station. Her phone buzzed with a text from her boss, wondering where she was. Real life was calling. But as Layla hailed a taxi to return to her office, she knew that everything had changed. The path ahead looked nothing like what she had imagined just 2 days ago. For the next week, Layla moved through her daily routine in a daze. She went to work, completed her assignments, and came home. But her mind was elsewhere, constantly replaying her conversation with Harold and leafing through the portfolio he'd given her. The Thomas Foundation's work was impressive. They had funded art programs in dozens of schools, created community studios in low-income neighborhoods, and provided scholarships to hundreds of talented young artists who couldn't afford higher education. The scope was far beyond anything Layla had imagined when she'd mentioned her dream of doing meaningful design. Work, you're distracted again, her boss commented after she'd made several errors on a corporate brochure layout. Is everything okay? I'm sorry, Layla said. I've just got a lot on my mind. Well, get it off your mind during work hours, he replied sharply. The client needs these revisions by tomorrow morning. As she reworked the brochure, yet another forgettable piece for a financial services company, Layla felt a familiar frustration building. 5 years of design school, thousands in student loans, countless hours honing her skills, all to create work that no one really cared about, that would be glanced at briefly and discarded. That evening, she called her mom. You're not going to believe what happened, Layla said, and proceeded to tell the whole story, from helping Harold at the train station to the job offer at his foundation. Baby, that's amazing, her mom exclaimed when she finished. It sounds like a perfect fit for you. I know, but Layla hesitated. It seems too good to be true. What if I take the job and it's not what I expect? Or worse, what if I fail? Her mom was quiet for a moment. Remember when you were little and you wanted to learn to ride a bike so badly? But when I finally saved up and got you one, you were too scared to try? Layla smiled at the memory. I made you hold onto the back for weeks. That's right. And then one day, I let go without telling you, and you rode all the way down the block before you realized I wasn't holding on anymore. And then I crashed into Mrs. Wilson's rose bush because I panicked, Layla added with a laugh. But you got back on, her mom said gently. That's what matters. You got back on, and you never needed me to hold the bike again. After they hung up, Layla looked at Harold's business card. Before she could overthink it, she dialed the number. He answered on the second ring. Layla, I was hoping to hear from you. I'd like to see the programs in action, she said, skipping pleasantries. Before I make any decisions. Of course, Harold replied, sounding pleased. I'll have Diana arrange everything. How does tomorrow after work sound? Say 4:30? The next afternoon, Diana met Layla outside her office building. She was driving a modest sedan, not the luxury car Layla had half expected. "Mr. Thomas thought you might like to visit the Westside Community Center first," Diana explained as they drove. "It's one of our longest-running partnerships." The community center was in a neighborhood Layla knew well, not far from where she'd grown up. It was housed in a renovated warehouse, its exterior transformed by a vibrant mural depicting children of various backgrounds engaged in different arts. Inside, the space was alive with activity. In one corner, young children painted at easels. In another, teenagers worked on digital tablets. A dance studio was visible through glass doors where a group was practicing a hip-hop routine. "Miss Layla," a small voice called out, and Layla turned to see Zoe, one of her students from her volunteer work, running toward her. "Zoe! I didn't know you came here too." Layla knelt to accept the 8-year-old's enthusiastic hug. 3 days a week," Zoe announced proudly. "I'm learning animation now. Want to see?" Zoe led Layla to a computer where she was working on a simple but charming animated sequence of a bird building a nest. "That's amazing," Layla said, genuinely impressed. "You've learned so much." "The foundation gives us all the stuff we need," Zoe explained, "and teachers who really know things." A woman in her 30s approached them. "Zoe's one of our most dedicated students," she said with a smile. "I'm Olivia, the center director. Layla Wilson," she introduced herself. "I actually volunteer here on Saturdays, teaching basic drawing." Olivia's eyes widened. "Oh, you're that Layla. Harold called me about you. I should have made the connection." She looked at Layla with new interest. "He doesn't usually get personally involved in hiring. You must have really impressed him." They toured the center, with Olivia explaining how the Thomas Foundation had not only provided funding but also expertise in curriculum development and connections to working artists who served as mentors and teachers. "The best part is that everything is free," Olivia said. "No child is turned away, regardless of their background or circumstances." That was Harold's #1 requirement when he approached us about the partnership. After the community center, Diana drove Layla to a public high school, where the foundation had established a state-of-the-art digital arts lab. Students were working after hours on everything from graphic design to video production to 3D modeling. Before the foundation stepped in, our art program was about to be cut entirely, the teacher explained. Now we have students getting accepted to top design schools, winning national competitions, even landing internships while still in high school. Their final stop was a gallery in the Arts District. Unlike the prestigious downtown galleries, this one showcased work from artists of all backgrounds and experience levels, professionals alongside students, established names next to newcomers. "The foundation subsidizes the space," Diana explained. 50% of all sales go directly to the artists, and the other 50% funds more community programs. Harold believes that art should be accessible to everyone, both creating it and experiencing it. As they walked through the gallery, Layla was struck by the quality and diversity of the work. One piece in particular caught her eye, a mixed media collage created by a 16-year-old from the Westside Community Center. That young artist received a full scholarship to the Institute of Fine Arts, Diana said, following Layla's gaze. "The foundation will cover whatever financial aid doesn't. Harold believes talent shouldn't be limited by finances." By the time they returned to the car, Layla's mind was made up. This was exactly the kind of work she'd dreamed of being part of. "Diana," she said as they drove back downtown, "can we stop by the foundation office? I'd like to speak with Harold if he's available." "He's expecting you," Diana replied with a knowing smile. Harold was waiting in the same office where they'd met before, though this time he was standing by the window, his hand resting lightly on the sill. "I can't see the view anymore," he said as Layla entered, "but I can feel the sun setting. The glass gets cooler as the light fades." He turned toward her. "How was your tour?" "It was incredible," Layla said honestly. "Everything you're doing, it's making such a difference in people's lives." Harold nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That's the goal. Not just to write checks, but to create lasting change." He gestured for her to sit. "And what did you think about the Arts Access Initiative?" "I think it's exactly what I've been looking for," Layla said. "A chance to use design for something meaningful, something that helps people." A smile spread across Harold's face. "So you'll take the position?" "Yes," Layla said, surprising herself with how confident she felt. "But I have some ideas about how we might expand it even further." I was hoping you'd say that, Harold replied. This initiative needs someone with vision, with passion, someone who sees possibilities where others don't. They spent the next hour discussing Layla's ideas, creating online resources for rural communities without physical access to arts programs, developing partnerships with local businesses to provide apprenticeships, establishing a mentoring network that connected young artists with professionals in their fields. You've clearly given this a lot of thought, Harold said, sounding impressed. I've been thinking about it nonstop since we met, Layla admitted. As their conversation wound down, Harold asked, when can you start? Layla thought about her current job, the endless revisions of corporate brochures, the boss who barely noticed her work unless there was a mistake. I need to give 2 weeks' notice. Of course, Harold nodded. We'll have everything ready for you when you arrive. Office, staff, resources, whatever you need to make this initiative successful. As Layla stood to leave, Harold added, you know, when I was younger, I was so focused on building my business that I missed many opportunities to do good along the way. It wasn't until I lost my sight that I truly began to see what matters. He smiled at the irony. I'm grateful that you helped an old blind man at the train station, Layla, but I'm even more grateful that you're helping me fulfill this vision now. 2 weeks later, Layla walked into the Thomas Foundation building, no longer a visitor but an employee, the director of the Arts Access Initiative. As the elevator carried her to her new office, she thought about how a simple act of kindness had changed the course of her life. Her mother had been right all those years ago. Small things could indeed be big things, and kindness always found its way back somehow. 6 months flew by like a dream. Layla's days were now filled with purpose, creativity, and the satisfaction of seeing her ideas take shape in the real world. The Arts Access Initiative had expanded to 15 new communities, bringing arts education to thousands of children who might otherwise never have held a paintbrush or touched a piano key. Her office at the Thomas Foundation overlooked the city park, and on clear days, she could see all the way to the train station where her journey had begun. Sometimes, when stuck on a difficult problem, she would stand at that window and remember the moment she'd first spotted Harold, his white cane tapping uncertainly against the polished floor. One small decision, one simple act of kindness, and everything had changed. Lost in thought again? Harold's voice came from her office doorway, accompanied by the light tap of his cane. Layla smiled. Despite his wealth and status, Harold still insisted on navigating the foundation offices independently most days. Just admiring the view and thinking about how we met. Harold made his way to the chair across from her desk with practiced ease. At 79, he moved more slowly than he had 6 months ago, but his mind remained sharp as ever. I've been thinking about that day too, he said, settling into the chair. Do you know what tomorrow is? Layla glanced at her calendar. Tuesday. It's exactly 1 year since a kind young woman helped a blind old man find his train, Harold said with a warm smile. 1 year since you changed my life. I think you've got that backwards, Layla laughed. You're the one who changed my life. Harold shook his head. We changed each other's lives. That's how it works with genuine connections. They're never one-sided. He leaned forward slightly. And speaking of connections, the board loves your new mentorship program. Pairing professional artists with kids from underserved communities. It's exactly the kind of sustainable impact we've been trying to achieve. Layla felt a rush of pride. The mentorship program had been her idea from top to bottom. Unlike her old job where her creative suggestions were routinely dismissed, here she was encouraged to dream big and given the resources to make those dreams reality. The first group of mentors starts next week, she said. 25 artists, all from backgrounds similar to the kids they'll be working with. People who understand the challenges these children face because they've faced them too. Representation matters? Harold nodded. When a child sees someone who looks like them succeeding in a field they're interested in, it changes what they believe is possible for themselves. He tapped his cane thoughtfully against the floor. You know, the foundation turns 25 next month. We're planning a celebration. Nothing too extravagant, but a chance to showcase the work we've done and the people who've made it possible. I've seen the planning emails, Layla said. It looks wonderful. What the emails don't mention is that I'll be making an announcement at the event, Harold continued. I've decided it's time to step back from day-to-day operations. My doctors have been after me to slow down for years, and I'm finally going to listen. Layla felt a pang of concern. Is everything okay? Health-wise, I mean. Just the usual complaints of old age, Harold assured her. Nothing dramatic. But at my age, time becomes more precious. I want to spend more of it with my grandchildren, maybe travel a bit while I still can. He smiled, the corners of his cloudy eyes crinkling. Besides, the foundation is in good hands. Patricia has been my right hand for 15 years. And now there's you and the other young leaders we've brought in. Fresh perspectives, new energy, that's what keeps an organization vital. Layla nodded, then remembered he couldn't see the gesture. We'll miss having you around every day. Oh, I won't disappear entirely, Harold chuckled. Just cutting back to a few days a month. Which brings me to the other reason for my visit today. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope. This is for you. Layla took the envelope and opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten card, the handwriting slightly shaky but legible, inviting her to dinner at Harold's home the following evening to celebrate their train station anniversary. I'd be honored, she said, genuinely touched by the gesture. Wonderful, Harold said, rising from his chair. My daughter and grandchildren will be there too. They've heard so much about you. They're eager to meet the woman who's made such an impact on their old man. The next evening, Harold's driver picked up Layla at her apartment. She had moved from her tiny studio to a comfortable one-bedroom, closer to the foundation offices, one of many changes the new job had made possible. As the car drove through the city and then up into the hills above it, Layla felt a flutter of nervousness. She had never been to Harold's home before, and despite their close working relationship, meeting his family felt significant in a way she hadn't anticipated. The car turned through an unassuming gate and followed a winding driveway to a house that surprised her. Given Harold's wealth, she had expected something grand and imposing. Instead, the home was modest by wealthy standards. A beautiful but not ostentatious two-story house with warm lights glowing in the windows. Harold greeted her at the door himself, his face lighting up at the sound of her voice. Right on time. Come in, come in. Everyone's excited to meet you. Inside, the house was cozy and lived in, with comfortable furniture and walls lined with family photographs. In the living room, a woman in her 50s with Harold's same warm smile rose to greet her. You must be Layla, she said, extending her hand. I'm Beth, Harold's daughter. Thank you for coming. Dad's been looking forward to this all week. Two teenagers, a boy and a girl who looked to be around 16 and 14, were setting the dining room table. They waved shyly when introduced as Harold's grandchildren, Alex and Lily. Grandpa talks about you all the time, Lily said. He says you're the most talented person at the foundation. Does he now? Layla glanced at Harold with a smile. Your grandfather is very kind, but he exaggerates. I do no such thing, Harold protested good-naturedly. I merely state facts as I see them, or rather as I perceive them through other means. During dinner, Layla learned more about Harold's life than she had in 6 months of working together. Beth shared stories of growing up as the daughter of an entrepreneur who was determined to balance work with family time. The grandchildren talked about their weekly outings with their grandfather, who insisted on taking them to museums and cultural events despite his blindness. He made us describe everything we saw in detail, Alex recalled. He said it helped him see through our eyes, but I think he was secretly teaching us to pay attention to our surroundings. Busted, Harold laughed. A good observation is both a gift you give others and a skill that serves you well in life. After dinner, while Beth and the teenagers cleared the table, Harold led Layla to his study, a warm room lined with books he could no longer read but kept for the memories of what's in them. I have something for you, he said, opening a drawer in his desk and removing a small box. Inside was a silver bracelet with a simple charm, a miniature white cane. To remind you of how we met, Harold explained, and of how small actions can change lives in big ways. Layla's eyes filled with tears as she slipped the bracelet onto her wrist. It's beautiful. Thank you. You know, Harold said softly. Before I lost my sight, I was so focused on success, on achievement, on what I could see and measure. After going blind, I learned that the most important things are invisible. Kindness, compassion, connection. He touched the bracelet on her wrist gently. When you stopped to help me that day, you weren't seeing Harold Thomas, the wealthy businessman. You were just seeing another human who needed help. That's a rare quality in today's world. Layla, most people are too busy, too distracted, or too focused on what others can do for them. Layla thought about how close she had come to walking past him that day, how her first instinct had been to keep moving and catch her train. "I'm so glad I stopped," she said simply. "As am I," Harold replied, "and so are the thousands of children who will benefit from your work in the years to come." That's how kindness multiplies. It creates ripples we can't possibly predict. A year later, at the opening of the first Arts Access Center, a building dedicated solely to the initiative Layla now directed, she stood at the podium and shared the story of how she met Harold Thomas. The crowd laughed at her description of her confusion upon discovering his true identity, and grew quiet as she described the lesson she had learned. We never know how one small act might change a life. Ours or someone else's, she concluded, the silver bracelet catching the light as she gestured. So be kind whenever possible. And as my friend Harold would say, it is always possible. In the front row, Harold listened with a proud smile, his hands resting on his cane. Neither of them could have imagined on that busy evening in the train station how their paths would intertwine and how many other lives would be touched as a result. One small decision. One moment of seeing another person's need. That was all it had taken to start a chain reaction of good that would continue long after both of them were gone. Living proof that sometimes the smallest choices make the biggest difference.